All right, today we're going to dive deep into one of the most fundamental stories in all of medicine. We're going to follow the incredible journey of a single cell, a real drama of survival, adaptation, and ultimately, life and death. So let's just start with this. Take a look. On the left, you've got a normal, healthy heart. But on the right, whoa, look how incredibly thick that muscle wall has become. This is what can happen under chronic stress, like from really high blood pressure. It almost looks like the heart has been hitting the gym, right?
And that really gets to the heart of the question for this explainer. What on earth is the connection between a bodybuilder who's trying to get bigger muscles and a heart that grows so dangerously large it starts to fail? Well, the answer, as we're about to see, is hidden deep inside ourselves.
Okay, so before we can really understand what goes wrong, we got to start with what right looks like. So let's meet our main character, the normal, healthy cell. Its number one job, its whole goal in life, is just to keep everything stable and balanced on the inside.
And that balanced state has a name, homeostasis. You can think of it as the cell's ultimate comfort zone. It's not static, it's always making tiny adjustments to keep things just so. This is our healthy baseline. But what happens when that balance gets seriously thrown off?
This flowchart here is basically going to be our map for this entire story. See our normal cell up at the top, just chilling in homeostasis? From there, it can run into a couple of things, general stress or something that's just flat out injurious. Let's see what happens when it's just under a little stress first.
You know when a cell first runs into some kind of stress, its first move isn't to just get injured and give up. Not at all. It's a survivor. It adapts. It actually changes its own structure and its function to deal with this new, tougher environment. And cells have four main tricks in their playbook for this. They can get bigger, that's hypertrophy. They can increase their numbers, that's hyperplasia. They can shrink down, we call that atrophy. Or, and this one is pretty wild, they can completely change their identity, a process called metaplasia. Let's take a closer look at a couple of these.
And we're back to our heart. This is the perfect example of hypertrophy. Every single one of those individual heart muscle cells has gotten bigger to handle that insane workload. It is the exact same biological process that makes a weightlifter's bicep grow. More demand equals bigger cells.
All right, next up, hyperplasia. Here, we're not talking about bigger cells, we're talking about more cells. A classic case is what's called benign prostatic hyperplasia. Basically, hormones tell the prostate cells to multiply and the whole gland gets bigger. But notice the domino effect. Now, the bladder muscle has to work way harder, so what does it do? It undergoes hypertrophy. One adaptation can actually trigger another.
Now, this one, metaplasia, is just fascinating. On the left, you've got the normal, delicate cells that line our airways. But if they're exposed to the chronic stress of something like cigarette smoke, the body can replace them with the much tougher, more resilient cells you see on the right. These new guys are way better at surviving the constant irritation. But here's the trade-off. They can't do the original job of clearing mucus, so you gain durability, but you lose function.
Okay, so let's do a quick summary. With both hypertrophy and hyperplasia, the organ gets bigger. The key is how. Hypertrophy is an increase in cell size, hyperplasia is an increase in cell number, and atrophy is the opposite. The organ shrinks because the cells get smaller or you just have fewer of them.
Look, adaptation is an amazing survival tool, but it definitely has its limits. If the stress is just too severe or it goes on for way too long, the cell just can't cope anymore. The adaptive tricks aren't enough, and the cell crosses a critical line. This is really the turning point of the whole story.
If we look back at our map, you can see exactly what's happening. The cell's been pushed past its breaking point. That arrow there, inability to adapt, shows it crossing over from adaptation into the danger zone of active injury.
But even injury itself has two stages. First, there's what we call reversible injury. The cell is sick, maybe it's swollen up, but if you take away the thing that's causing the problem, it can actually recover. It can go back to normal. But if that injury keeps going, it crosses a second and final line into irreversible injury, and that is the point of no return. The damage is done, and cell death is now absolutely going to happen.
This brings us to the final act, cell death. And it turns out there are two fundamentally different ways a cell can die. To make it really stick, you can think of it as a tale of murder versus suicide.
So necrosis is like a violent, messy murder. It's caused by something external, like a toxin or a complete lack of oxygen. The cell swells up, it bursts, and it spills its guts everywhere, which causes a huge inflammatory mess for all its neighbors. Apoptosis, on the other hand, is like a quiet, clean, programmed suicide. It's a controlled sequence where the cell just neatly dismantles itself and packages itself up for easy disposal.
Let's take a look at the crime scene for necrosis. You can see the cell membrane just falls apart, the insides swell up, and everything leaks out. This triggers that inflammatory reaction in the tissue all around it. It is totally uncontrolled, chaotic death.
Now contrast that with the elegance of apoptosis. The cell shrinks, it condenses, and it breaks itself apart into these neat little membrane-wrapped packages called apoptotic bodies. There's no leakage, no mess. Then other cells come along and just gobble them up, like a little cleanup crew. It's so tidy it causes zero inflammation.
This table just nails the key differences. Necrosis is messy, it's always caused by something bad, and it always leads to inflammation. Apoptosis is clean, often a totally normal part of how our body works, and it causes no inflammation at all.
So, we followed the single cell through its whole life story. But why does any of this microscopic drama actually matter? Because this isn't just happening in a lab somewhere. This is the fundamental basis for almost every single disease that affects human beings.
So let's connect these tiny little events to the big picture. Because at its very core, every major disease is really just a story of a cellular response that's gone terribly wrong.
I mean, just think about it. What's a heart attack? It's the messy, necrotic death of heart cells that are starved of oxygen. What is cancer? It's often out-of-control cell division, hyperplasia, combined with a total failure of that suicide program, apoptosis. The bad cells just refuse to die. Alzheimer's? Too much apoptosis, leading to a devastating loss of brain cells. You see? The very words we just learned, hypertrophy, necrosis, apoptosis, this is the language of disease.
And this is not a new idea. Rudolf Virchow, who is basically the father of modern pathology, he said this over 150 years ago. Every single disease, from a simple cold to a complex cancer, starts with an injury to a cell. If you understand this journey, you're on your way to understanding medicine itself. And that leaves us with this one last kind of fascinating thought. We've seen that our cells have this pre-programmed self-destruct switch, apoptosis. So what if we could learn to control that switch? Could we learn to flip it on in cancer cells that refuse to die? Or maybe turn it down in diseases like Alzheimer's where too many cells are dying? The future of medicine might literally hinge on our ability to control this fundamental journey of the cell.